You're watching Talking Points, a focus on the political scene in Lubbock and across the South Plains.
Thanks for sticking with us. Well, so far we've heard from Representative Burrows on the inaction from both administrators and police that failed to keep people safe in Uvalde. He's also made clear that now is not the time to prescribe the policy fixes, but that time will come soon. Here's more of our conversation on how these facts unfolded and on the fate of the law enforcement officials who failed that day.
You mentioned the background of the attacker. I think that really is the most disturbing part of this report for me, because when you learn about his background, he was called school shooter as a nickname by his friends. He would use violent language and pictures and usernames online. He had an interest in gore, violent sex, making over-the-top threats, and then what comes from that on the days that he is buying the things he needs to act on those violent tendencies? Nothing. There was no criminal record. There were no warnings. How does that happen? How do so many of his peers know that something is not right with him, and then there seems to be no impediment to him buying the high-powered weapons that he used in Uvalde?
There is no reasonable explanation for the fact that people knew there was something wrong. He became increasingly isolated, started playing violent video games, and obviously, took on that persona where, to the extent people called him school shooter. Somebody has to say something. And I think it's a lesson for all of our communities. If you see somebody going down this dark path and you start seeing these symptoms, you have to actually give somebody the information to act upon it. The school system. They monitored social media and they had, the good policies in place to update it, but the problem was he was never in school. There was no, he basically stopped attending his senior year. The year before that, over 100 different absences. And so there wasn't opportunities for them to do that. But if you start to see these types of characteristics, people have to actually, in the community, has to be responsive to it and let somebody know so they can potentially do something about it.
Do you see a path in the Texas House to providing some kind of legal pathway to providing some warning signs, some kind of mechanism to where law enforcement, firearm stores, things like that, can't actually see those warning signs?
Yeah, look, I know everybody wants the headline. What does Burrows think the policy ought to be on different things? And I promise you, I've got some feelings I can't wait to get back and share. What I'm going to tell you is this. With respect to the assignment that we were given to come out with the facts, I'm going to let the report speak for itself for some modicum of time. But, as a lawmaker from Lubbock, Texas, who has strong views on every single subject and every single policy in there, I'm going to take some time and put those to, paper, and I will share those, here with the community and with the state and the other leaders and say, these are the things I think we ought to be done and ought to be taken up.
I understand that desire. I'm not trying to get a headline here, right? But again, without some kind of tangible policy prescription for the words on this paper, then that is all they are, right? And I know that you know that. Maybe you feel it's a little early to talk about what can be done. I understand that, but soon.
You're right? I mean, you have to have policy and accountability that flows from this.
Right.
But for the past 45 days now, I have lived in Uvalde, off and on, and talking to people and trying to come up with a set of facts that will guide that policy. And out of respect for the committee and out of respect for the assignment, I want the facts to speak for themselves for some period of time before Burrows, comes back out and says, here are the things that, I think we can do from a policy perspective.
Okay, well, let's go back to those facts, because another important aspect of this that we saw this week is that these facts did not unfold the way that you wanted. Right? You said that your plan all along was to show all of this and importantly that surveillance video to the families before the wider public saw that. And that's understandable, but that did not happen. And then in the report, you write something that I think is stronger than what you said publicly this week. You said, "We regret that others, under cover of anonymity and for their own motives, have sensationalized evidence of this horrible tragedy at the risk of glorifying a monster." Yeah. Is that how you feel these other outlets that had leaked, in your words, the surveillance video? Is that how they were acting?
Yeah, and my reference is those who leaked it to the news media. It's not actually the media itself. Look, I want to be very clear. our committee drove and wanted the hallway video out so people could see the law enforcement response. We wanted the families to see it first out of respect for them, because we have the opportunity to be in that community and understand the need for that information. But also, I know when we put it in here, the attacker wanted notoriety. He does not deserve that. We did not use his name in this report. We would not have used his image in what we actually showed, because he does not deserve to get what he wanted. And more importantly, we know there's these communities that are out there online, through these chat rooms where they, like I said, glorify, these monstrous, evil, horrible acts. And I don't want others to see this and think of him as an inspiration. So for that reason, we would have edited out any pictures or likeness of him, and I think that was the responsible thing to do.
Of course, there is a concern for what are the ways to find these facts the most objectively. But until now, this has all been behind closed doors. Have you given any thought to how you will balance those concerns in the future?
So we basically, there's not a manual when you come into the legislature, to actually put on the hat of an investigator. But we've had investigative committees in the past, and the precedent has always been that we conduct our interviews behind closed doors. And the reason being is we think witnesses are more willing to come in quicker without the spotlight being shown on them, and are more candid and conversational with us. It's the way it's been done in the past, will probably be done in the future, and quite honestly, I think it probably worked.
It does seem that now that this is out and the Senate still has work to do, there does seem to be the need for a little bit of reconciling between the narrative that we have now in the House report and some of the narrative that has been coming from the Senate, specifically in terms of who bears the brunt of the blame. We've seen Lieutenant Governor Patrick share reports from DPS statements that seem to push blame down onto the local level. This report seems to place far more blame on DPS and other agencies than we have heard since before it was released. What do you make of that disconnect? And
so I have not done a comparison and contrast to what any other agency or any other body has actually said. So I don't know how how much in agreement we are, or if there's any disagreement in there. Let me say this: there were officers in that hallway who knew or should have known there were victims in there that were either being killed or dying. At that point in time, the expectation, the standard was they do everything they can to protect those lives. They did not do that. They failed. Whether it was going through the front door, going through the windows, figuring out other ways to distract, do something. That is what active shooter training, requires. They did not do that. Most of those in the hallway, with the best information of that, were at the local level.
Will officers or even people ranking higher than them lose their jobs over this?
I don't know. Obviously, we report the facts and come out with that, and the people who are going to have the jurisdiction to make, figure out what that is and accountability, they have processes, they have reviews, they have investigations, and I assume many of those are underway.
We'll keep following this. I really appreciate you running us through this, and we'll keep following this as it develops.
Okay.
Chairman Burrows, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you so much.